Before we move forward in the prophet, let's pause for a moment. We've already walked through the first chapters, on love, marriage, children, and giving. Each one, like a soft whisper from the soul, teaching us what it truly means to live, and to feel. Now let's move forward to our next chapter on work. Then a plowman said, "Speak to us of work." And the prophet answered, "You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle, is to become a stranger to the seasons. To step out of life's rhythm. And to stand still, while everything around you flows onward. Work is not a curse. It is a way of loving life. When you work with joy, you weave a thread between your heart and the heart of existence. When you work out of love, you build not just a house or a field, but a piece of your own soul. And what does it mean to work with love? It means to weave your cloth with threads drawn from your own heart. As if every touch, every stroke, were a blessing upon those who will wear it. To bake bread as if feeding someone you cherish. To build a home as if it will hold the dreams of those you love. Yet, if you work without joy, if your labor becomes a burden or a duty done in resentment, then it is better to rest. Because when you work with love, you sing. But when you work with weariness, you mutter. And who among us would rather hear the muttering of tired souls than the singing of free spirits? Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you sit at the gate of the temple, and take alms from those who work with joy. For the fragrance of the bread speaks to those who bake it with love. The warmth of a home tells of the hands that built it with devotion. And the art that moves our hearts is born only from souls that find joy in their labor. So the next time you rise to your work, remember, it is not merely a task to finish. It is your conversation with the universe. A silent prayer. A bridge between the seen and the unseen. Between effort and grace. Every act done with care. Every moment infused with presence. Becomes sacred. For work done in love never tires the heart. It only deepens it. This is the beauty of work. Not a duty, not a weight, but the art of loving life through creation. And now, as the prophet's words settle within us, we move forward to the next chapter, on joy and sorrow. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And the prophet answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. The same well from which your laughter rises was once filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find that it is only what has given you sorrow that gives you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow. And others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come. And when one sits with you at your table, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Truly, you are suspended between joy and sorrow, like a scale that swings between them. Only when you are empty, are you at rest and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, your sorrow must rise, or your joy must sink. For it is only through the contrast that the heart learns to feel. And perhaps it is in the darkest of your nights that your greatest dawns are born. Joy and sorrow are not enemies, they are lovers in disguise. They dance together, each revealing the face of the other. The heart that refuses sorrow also denies joy. To close yourself to pain is to close yourself to life itself. So embrace both. Let them shape you, carve you, soften you. For the heart that has known deep sorrow can hold a joy so radiant that it becomes light for others lost in the dark. Remember, it is the cracked vessel that lets the light through. It is the broken seed that gives birth to the tree. It is the heart that has fallen that finally learns to rise in love. So when you laugh, do not forget the moments that made you weep. And when you weep, remember that joy is quietly waiting to return, like the dawn that follows the longest night. This is the mystery of joy and sorrow. Not two emotions, but two faces of the same soul. One teaches us to feel, the other to heal, and both to live. Then a mason came forth and said, "Speak to us of houses." And he answered, "For even as you have homes for your bodies, so too must your soul have a home, a place where dreams and silence live together. You speak of walls, of roofs, of safety and warmth. But I tell you this: when the warmth within your heart grows cold, no roof can shelter you. And when your spirit burns bright, even the barren ground feels like home. Your house should not be an anchor, but a sail. It should not trap your life, but let it move freely, like the wind that knows no boundary. Think of your house not as stone and timber, but as the extension of your heart. Let its doors be wide open to the sun, and let your windows frame the laughter of those you love. Some of you say, "It is comfort we seek." But I say, comfort too long enjoyed becomes a cage, and the spirit that rests too deeply in comfort forgets how to fly. Let your home not be a fortress against life, but a meeting place for love, peace, and kindness. In every stone you place, in every corner you sweep, remember that your true dwelling is not in bricks, but in your thoughts. For a pure heart makes every home a temple, and an unkind heart makes even a palace feel empty. Build your houses, yes, but do not forget the sky above them. For a house without open skies is but a prison. And remember, you may build walls high enough to shut out the noise, but no wall can silence the call of your soul. In your longing for comfort, you invite the spirit of restlessness to dwell beside you, whispering softly in the night. You were not made to stand still. You were made to move, to seek, to grow. So keep a window open for your spirit. Let light, laughter, and even sorrow walk through your door. For a home without both joy and grief is not a home. It is a museum of stillness. And though your house may rise in the valley, it shall not hide your heart from the mountain wind. And if you build your house upon the shore, let the sea not claim all your dreams. For the earth is your mother's lap, and the sky, your father's embrace. You belong to both. The true home is not where you live. It is where you become. So, decorate not your walls first, but your mind. Fill it with kindness. Let compassion be your furniture. Let gratitude be your window, and love, your roof. One day, when you leave your house, it will remember your footsteps, the laughter you shared, the tears you shed. They will live within its walls. Every home has a memory. Every room has a soul. But do not let your heart be buried in one place. For even when you move from one dwelling to another, carry your light with you, and the world itself will feel like home. You may build your houses, but know this: the foundation that lasts forever is not made of stone, but of love. For when the body returns to dust, the house falls silent. But the love you gave within its walls, that becomes eternal. May every home you build remind you, not of where you live, but of what you live for. And the weaver said, "Speak to us of clothes." And he answered, "Your clothes conceal much of your beauty, yet they hide not the unbeautiful. And though you seek in garments the freedom of privacy, you may find in them a chain instead. You would adorn yourselves in garments, yes. But let it not be out of fear or vanity. Remember, modesty is not in the cloth you wear, but in the purity of your thoughts. For what is your clothing, if not the weaving of your dreams into visible threads? Let it be woven from love, stitched with kindness, and dyed with the colors of your soul. Many wear fine garments to cover emptiness within, but those who are rich in spirit need no ornament. Their simplicity itself shines brighter than gold. Some say, our clothes are a statement of who we are. But remember this: the truest self is not what is seen, but what is felt. Let your garments not scream, but whisper. Let them speak softly of grace, of peace, of comfort. Do not clothe yourself to impress the eyes of others, but to please the quiet dignity of your own soul. The purpose of clothing is not to disguise, but to reveal, gently, humbly, the light that already lives within you. Beware of the pride that hides behind fashion. For pride wears silk, while truth walks barefoot. You may dress in elegance, but do not let your garments become your identity. For what are you, if stripped of the robes that the world has given you? You are the same breath, the same heartbeat, the same flame of the divine. Therefore, wear simplicity like a crown. For in simplicity, there is freedom. In freedom, there is truth. And in truth, there is peace. When you weave your cloth, remember that the threads come from the earth. From the sheep's wool, from the cotton's flower. From the patience of time itself. The one who spins the thread. The one who sews the seam. The one who dyes the cloth. They all become part of the story you wear. So do not wear your clothes with arrogance, but with gratitude. Let your clothes remind you of the hands that made them, the lives that touched them, the earth that gave them. For every fiber carries a memory, and every color carries a dream. And though you may need garments to live in this world, never forget, there is a beauty beyond fabric, beyond form. When the last thread is shed, when the final garment falls away, you will stand in your truth, clothed only in your soul's light. For the spirit needs no cloth. The heart needs no covering. The light within you is enough. And when you finally meet the dawn, may your spirit walk naked and unashamed. For it has nothing left to hide. The prophet smiled and said, "Blessed are those whose garments mirror the simplicity of their hearts. For when they walk, the earth itself bows to their humility." Our world judges by what we wear, but the universe listens only to what we are. May we learn to adorn ourselves not in luxury, but in compassion, not in price, but in presence, and not in fashion, but in faith. Let your clothes serve your soul, not your ego, and you will find that even the simplest fabric can make you divine. And the merchant said, "Speak to us of buying and selling." And the prophet lifted his gaze, his eyes reflecting the dance of sunlight upon gold and grain. And he said, "It is in exchanging the gifts of the earth that you shall find abundance and be satisfied. Yet unless this exchange be in love and kindness, it will only lead some to greed, and others to hunger." Buying and selling are not merely acts of need. They are acts of connection. For when you trade with your brother, you are not trading goods alone, but your faith, your trust, your time upon this earth. The baker, the weaver, the merchant, all are threads in the same divine tapestry. When one breaks the trust, the entire weave trembles. Do not say, "I will sell to make gain." For the heart that seeks gain alone is already poor in spirit. Instead, let your selling be an act of service, and your buying an act of gratitude. When you buy from your brother, remember, you are buying a fragment of his labor, a piece of his life's breath. And when you sell, know that you are giving not only what your hands have shaped, but what your heart has nourished. The marketplace is not a battlefield. It is a mirror. It reflects the honesty of your intentions and the depth of your compassion. Do not deceive, for deception sows decay within your spirit, long before it reaches the scales. Let your scales be just, and your weights true. For the gods weigh your soul, with a balance more delicate than that of any merchant. When the fisherman brings his catch, and the farmer his harvest, both offer their devotion to the same eternal rhythm. The seller gives in joy, and the buyer receives with gratitude. This is the music of creation, the commerce of souls. Blessed are those who see commerce not as a contest, but as communion. For they trade not merely in goods, but in love, in trust, and in mutual upliftment. But beware those who, in their buying and selling, seek only profit at the cost of the soul. They build walls of gold, but sleep in rooms of emptiness. Remember, you cannot drink gold, nor eat silver. True wealth lies in how many hearts breathe easier. Because you have lived, give even when you sell. For generosity is not the loss of profit, but the proof of abundance. The river that gives water never runs dry. So too, the soul that gives freely never falls into poverty. All things move in circles. The seed becomes the fruit becomes the seed, and life continues. So too with giving and taking. The energy you offer today returns to you tomorrow, multiplied by the love with which it was given. Therefore, trade with reverence. Let your market be not a place of profit, but a temple of mutual respect. For when the soul of the market is pure, all who walk through it walk in peace. The prophet looked upon the people and said, when you give of yourself in fairness and faith, the earth shall bless your hands. For buying and selling are not about gain and loss. They are about balance, love, and life itself. In every act of exchange, remember, you are trading not things, but pieces of your soul. Then one of the judges of the city stood forth and said, speak to us of crime and punishment. And the prophet raised his gaze toward the mountains. His eyes filled with the sadness of one who has seen too much truth. And he said, when your spirit wanders in the night alone and afraid, who among you has not felt the trembling pull between what is right and what is wrong? For crime is not born in darkness. It is born in confusion. And the one who stumbles is not wicked by nature, but only walking through a fog that has not yet cleared. I tell you this: the guilty is often the wounded soul, crying out in ways the world cannot understand. And though his cry may echo as harm upon others, it is still a cry for healing. You cannot separate the good from the wicked, any more than you can pluck a flower and command its fragrance to remain in the garden. For just as a leaf cannot fall without the whisper of the whole tree, no man commits a crime without the silent consent of those who watch and turn away. And you, the righteous, if you must call one among you evil, first look into your own heart, and see if you too are not part of the crime. For the wrongdoer cannot act alone. Together we weave the cloth of virtue and of sin. Together we rise, and together we fall. The murdered is not unconnected from the murderer, the robbed not separate from the robber. For truly, the wave that strikes the shore is the same water that once kissed it in peace. And I say to you, the one who commits wrong has already been wronged by life. His chains are not forged by malice. but by misunderstanding, by hunger, by pain unseen. Therefore, when you rise to judge another, remember that you judge yourself also. You stand as both the accuser and the accused, both the torch and the flame it burns. For if the world were truly just, who among you would escape the scales? Who has not harmed with silence? Who has not wounded with words unspoken? And what is punishment, if not the shadow of mercy misunderstood? Often do you punish from fear, from the anger of being reminded that you too could fall as low. But I say to you, let your punishment also be a cure. Let it heal and not destroy. For when you cut the branch that bears bitter fruit, do not forget to water the roots. For there too lies the cause. Teach, instead of torturing. Mend, instead of condemning. Love, even when love feels undeserved. The truly wise do not ask, who is guilty? They ask, what pain has led this soul astray? For the man who steals bread is not hungry for food alone, but for justice, for belonging, for the simple feeling of being seen. And when his hands are bound, remember that you are binding the same hands that could have built a temple, had they been guided, not shamed. In each wrongdoer hides a poet silenced by fear, a child who once wanted to love, but forgot how. Let your judgment be like the sun, warm and clear, not like the lightning, blinding and brief. For mercy that endures is the truest justice. When you forgive, you free yourself. When you understand, you become light. And when you love, you end the very cycle of crime itself. So I say unto you, bless the fallen, not for their deeds, but for the truth they reveal about us all. For every criminal is a mirror, and in that reflection, we are called not to condemn, but to awaken. The path of humanity is not paved with punishment, but with understanding. And the day you look upon the wrongdoer, and whisper, there too am I, shall be the day your city begins to heal. The prophet then fell silent. His eyes were no longer upon the judge, but upon the horizon, as though he saw a world where love had finally learned to see beyond the crime. For in truth, crime and punishment are but lessons, and the soul learns not by fear, but by forgiveness. Then a lawyer said, but what of our laws, Master? And the prophet looked upon the people, as though gazing into the memory of all time. And he said, you delight in laying down laws, yet you delight even more in breaking them. For what are laws but lines you draw upon the flowing water, hoping that the current will obey your hand? You would make rules for the rhythm of your own freedom. But freedom is not meant to be ruled. It is the wind, unseen, untamed, laughing at the fences you build to contain it. You speak of justice as though you have found it. But justice lives in the spaces between your judgments. You build courts and cast verdicts, yet forget that no man can truly be measured by the letter of a law. For laws arise not from wisdom, but from fear. The fear that without them, chaos will reign. But have you not seen that when you cage the wind, the air itself grows still and heavy? When you bind a man too tightly with laws, his spirit begins to suffocate. For life is not a court, it is a journey. And the path of a man cannot always walk within the lines another has drawn. You would have the innocent and the guilty walk under the same shadow, and call that equality. Yet I say, mercy is the higher law, and understanding the truest justice. If you would truly write laws, let them be written not upon parchment or stone, but upon the living heart. Let the heart be the only court, and compassion its only judge. You call yourselves free when your laws bind only the wrongdoer. But I tell you, freedom is not born from the cage of punishment, but from the awakening of the soul. The just man does not obey the law. He becomes the law by living in truth and kindness. When you live by love, there is no need for command. When you live by wisdom, there is no need for rule. For laws are like crutches, useful to the lame, but a burden to those who can already walk upright. I tell you this: a time shall come when men will need no written laws, for they will govern themselves by understanding. When love becomes the measure of every act, when kindness guides every decision, when truth becomes habit, then laws shall fall silent, for they will no longer be needed. Yet until that day, make your laws with humility, and break them with wisdom. For even the best law is but a candle, a fragile light trying to imitate the sun. Do not worship the candle. Seek instead the dawn. And remember, you are not made for obedience, but for awareness. The voice of your conscience is the voice of the true lawgiver, and it whispers not in courts, but in silence. When you listen to that voice, you will no longer ask, what is right, or what is wrong? For your being itself will become the answer. The prophet smiled, and the people bowed their heads, for they had seen that the highest law is not written on paper, but within the soul that knows peace. And an old priest said, "Speak to us of freedom." And he, the prophet, lifted his eyes, as though seeing beyond the horizon of human thought. And he said, "You shall be free indeed, not when your days are without care, nor your nights without grief, but when these things no longer bind you. You call freedom a crown of light. Yet it is not won by the breaking of chains alone, but by the quiet mastery of self. You speak of freedom as though it were a place, something to be reached, a door to be opened. But I tell you, freedom is not a destination. It is a realization. For even the bird who flies across the sky is not free if his wings carry fear. In your longing for freedom, you become its own prisoner, chasing it as a mirage across the desert of your desires. And when you finally hold it in your hands, you find that it was never outside of you. Many of you speak of freedom from your masters, from laws, from sorrow. But I say unto you, only when you are free from your own longing, and your own fear. Shall you be truly free? For how can you break the chains of others, when your own heart is shackled by envy and doubt? You are not bound by iron. You are bound by your thoughts. And no key exists outside you. For the lock was never on the door. It was always on your mind. The tyrant whom you would overthrow, he dwells within you. His name is fear. His face is desire. His voice is attachment. You rise against kings, but not against your own ignorance. And so long as you carry those rulers within, even if you walk in open fields, you remain a captive. Some of you speak of freedom in love, yet even there, your hearts seek to possess. You wish to be free, but also to hold the beloved as your own. I tell you, love that binds is not love. It is a cage made of golden threads. Let your love rise like the tide, embracing the shore, but never clinging to it. Let your soul stand tall and unshaken. For freedom is not escape. It is surrender to truth. You call yourself free when you leave behind your duties. But I say, you are most free when you serve with joy. For service without bondage, and obedience without fear, are the pathways to true liberation. You think freedom is the absence of chains, but it is, in truth, the presence of purpose. A man is not free when he does what he wants. He is free when what he wants is in harmony with his soul. And if it is peace you seek through freedom, then know, only in discipline does peace reside, and only in surrender does freedom breathe. The mountain stands firm, not because it resists the wind, but because it accepts its dance. So be like the mountain, still, yet yielding. Be like the river, flowing, yet free. And remember, when you bow to nothing, and no one bows to you, yet you bow before truth, you are free. When you desire nothing, yet everything moves through you, you are free. When you fear no loss, and seek no gain, you are free. And when your soul finally learns to say, I am the wind, I am the sea, I am the flame, then, and only then, you shall know freedom. For the soul that has awakened cannot be confined. And the prophet turned away, leaving the people in silence. For they had felt the weight of their own invisible chains, and glimpsed the vastness of the sky within. There came a scholar, dressed in calm reason, who said, Speak to us of passion and reason. And the prophet raised his gaze toward the horizon, where the sea touched the sun. And he spoke. Your soul is a battlefield, where your reason and your passion wage war. Reason, your guiding light, keeps your feet steady upon the earth. Passion, your sacred fire, gives your soul its wings to soar. You need both. For just as a bird cannot fly with one wing, you cannot truly live with one alone. If your passion is the ship, then your reason is the rudder. Without the rudder, your ship would wander endlessly among perilous rocks. Yet without the wind of passion, your ship would stand still. Its sails silent, its journey lifeless. So honor both, the flame and the calm. Let reason restrain passion when it threatens to destroy. And let passion guide reason when it begins to crumble into coldness. Some will tell you, reason is the master, passion the servant. But I say unto you, both serve the soul. For when reason sits alone in judgment, it becomes a tyrant, seeing life as only equations and order. And when passion rules unrestrained, it burns everything it touches, love, wisdom, and peace. Within you lives a sacred tension, the pull between fire and thought, between dream and discipline. It is this tension that makes you alive. The divine in you seeks balance, to feel deeply and to understand deeply. Remember this. Reason and passion are like the strings of a lyre. When they play in harmony, your soul becomes a beautiful song. But if one string snaps, the music dies into silence. So do not fear passion, it is the breath of your heart. Do not fear reason, it is the guardian of your path. Let them rise together like day and night, each giving meaning to the other. And when they finally meet, in the twilight of understanding, your soul shall know peace. And the prophet fell silent, watching as the sun melted into the sea, its fire tempered by the calm of water. For he knew that within every heart, the same balance must be found. And a woman spoke again, saying, Tell us of pain. The prophet closed his eyes for a moment, as though feeling the echo of her words within his own soul. And then he said, Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone must break for the seed to awaken, so must your heart endure cracks to let the light enter. You would know the secret of your sorrow. Yet how can you truly understand joy, unless your heart has first been carved by pain? It is through the depths of suffering that we begin to touch the sacredness of life itself. Many call pain a curse, but I say, it is your greatest teacher. For when you lose something or someone, the ache you feel is not a punishment. It is love, stripped bare of illusion. It is the soul's reminder that you once cared deeply, that you once lived fully. The deeper the sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Just as the hollow of a flute must be carved before it can sing. And when you drink of sorrow's cup, do not shrink or curse the bitter taste. For in that cup, you drink from the same well that once held your laughter. The spring that feeds your tears is the same that nourishes your soul. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow. And others, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say, they are inseparable. Together they rise and fall, like two wings of the same bird. If you keep your heart closed against pain, you also lock the door to joy. For only an open heart, even when bleeding, can receive the light of life in full. So when pain visits you, bow before it as you would before a sacred guest. Listen to what it has come to teach. For within every ache lies an awakening, and within every tear, a whisper of wisdom. And when you find yourself weeping in the dark, remember, the dawn you long for is already growing quietly within you. Your pain is not your enemy. It is your sculptor. It shapes you into who you were meant to be. The prophet then lifted his gaze to the horizon, where night and dawn met like old friends. And he said softly, "Rejoice in your pain, for it reveals your depth. Bless it, for it keeps you human. And when you have learned to love your pain, you shall fear nothing." And the people stood silent, their hearts trembling, for they knew he had spoken, not of pain, but of love.